Hey, everybody, it's day 21, and we couldn't be more excited than to have Kate Roberts in the room. Oh my gosh, we are so excited to talk to you. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. It's so nice to see both of you.
Oh
I'm
my
jealous
God.
of I'm jealous of the title of your book, A Novel Approach. It's such a brilliant title. I just love double entendres and
I wish I could
I
take
know
credit for
you.
it, but it's all Heinemann, man. I can't title a book to save my life. I've never been able to title anything. I'm always like, I don't know, let's call it the next book.
Okay, so I'm partial to falling in love with close reading because
Also,
I
I'm
got
the same
so
way.
much pushback for love and book love. Like,
That's right.
people don't
Did
want
you
to talk
really?
about love. And I was like, yeah, but that's the title. And then
That
yours
is
comes
the
out and I'm
title.
like, I think they're okay with it because,
So you broke the seal. I appreciate that.
Oh my God. I love that. And I love DIY approach. I don't know how many people know the power that's in that book. I hope that this will help them see that.
The do-it-yourself literacy book.
Yes, because DIY is like how we do everything. We do it ourselves, right? We're teachers. And the brilliance that I loved was you personalize this. Here's the mini lesson. Here's my, like, this is what I did. And if you didn't get it the first time, here it is. I've got it for you in a conference. I mean, I know you worked at Teachers College for years. You're this brilliant literacy coach, but you've also had this career that's outside of that. So we're excited that you're with us.
I'm excited to be here. Yeah. I think a lot of the work in the books that I've done, I think I've said this to you, Penny, maybe you too, Kelly, is that I feel like A Novel Approach is just a gateway drug to you all.
Oh, I don't know about that.
In terms of some of the structures and philosophies of workshop, right? Of like, how do we enter into these really hard things to get going in our classrooms, right? I'm sure you all share that of working with teachers who absolutely believe in the things we believe. But getting from point A to what feels like point Z can feel really, really scary and hard.
That's so smart. Kate, you don't know how many people, like just this week, Calgary Academy, who I've been working with for some time, small school, K-8, wonderful people, said one of their biggest moves was reading A Novel Approach.
Well, that's awesome. It's been the most fulfilling thing I've done in my career.
Yeah.
Sense of feeling like, I'm a Libra. I'm a big.
Your birthday?
Are you? September 27th.
October 17th. And Kelly is like October 6th or 8th or 9th.
Really?
9th, but keep guessing.
I know. It's on my calendar. That's how I know. But listen, we're all Libras. How scary.
We're all Libras. So I'm a believer in balance, right? So it's this idea of how do we balance these things out and make things feel attainable. And your work, every time I read the books y'all put out, I literally feel like my breath gets taken away because there's a sense, the feeling I get, and I'm too tired to compliment you amply, honestly. But like, I feel that same feeling I had when I visited the Grand Canyon and stood on top of the grand vista. There's this vision that you put out about what particularly high school classrooms can be that is just truly breathtaking, and I'm so appreciative of your voice in the world.
I thought you were going to say something about a fear of falling.
Well, that too, right? That's where my book comes in. I'll catch you.
Oh my God.
Let's talk about the reading balance a little bit. Like what for those who haven't read A Novel Approach or the other two books, what are your thoughts about trying to balance the kids' reading lives?
I think there's balance sometimes gets mistaken as meaning everything's equal sized, right? That to have balance, you have to have the same amount of whole class text as you do choice text, so the same amount of this method as this method. But that's just not true, right? Like I've got one leg that's a little longer than the other one. And so my balance is a little different, right, than maybe yours is, that have the same size. And I think the same is true when we're teaching reading, right? Like if I've got a group of kids who are just voracious readers who can't wait to read, if most of them are like, give me anything and I'll just consume it, then you can see an uptick in whole class text, right? There's an argument. It doesn't mean choice goes away, but you could argue for that, right? Whereas another classroom where I don't have a lot of self-identified readers, like, boy, oh boy, do those kids need a whole ton of choice, as well as some texts that I've chosen for us to take a look at. So that question of like, who needs what is, I think, at the heart of thinking about what we're balancing and how we're balancing. And also just like my capacity as a teacher, right, in this moment of time. What do I think I can pull off right now? Right, in a way that feels sustainable for me.
I love how you complicated that question with one group of kids needs this and one group doesn't. Because I think teachers often plan across their whole schedule. And you've said the kids' needs are different. That's really.
I was just in a classroom today working with Romeo and Juliet, speaking of whole class texts. And, you know, the skill we were intending to focus on for this unit was how to read a tough text, like monitoring for sense and repairing comprehension and all that sort of basic stuff when a text is really hard. And so we did a quick assessment of the class, as 10th grade class, took a look at what they were able to understand from Shakespeare. The kids were amazing at it. They were so good. So we're looking at that and we're like, well, what do you do in that moment, right? As a teacher, how do you balance your needs as a human being and your inability to spend 24 hours a day planning with the fact that I have a class of kids who does not need the skill I'm about to teach them for 4 weeks?
Oh,
that's
what a
tough
profound
question.
thought.
It's tough. What do I do? Like, realistically, how do I balance those two things? Do I forge forth? Do I shift it? It's a lot of things in question there, I think.
Oh, for sure. I love how you asked that question. That's a deep question. Do I forge ahead?
There's no right answer, right? Because if I don't have the capacity as a teacher to plan for 4 different classes, then the right answer is maybe I have to forge ahead and do my best. Do you know what I mean? And try to tweak things where I can. But there are other times where I have
love
that.
you, Kate. This is why, because you are not denying the realities they're living with.
Well, they're suffering, right?
Right.
I mean, teachers now are.
Time of the pandemic is not a time when they all want to innovate and try something. And, you know, I had a teacher a couple of weeks ago who told me that, you know, like, why am I teaching To Kill a Mockingbird? Because I got January planned.
That's right.
Like when I'm on Christmas break and I'm exhausted, I know January's done. And he goes, I know that's not the answer I'm supposed to give, but that's the answer. And like, can we just accept where people are?
And can we shift the question to like, where are you putting that energy? Like, where are you putting energy into changing and transforming your practice, right? So like right now, I would be so happy if teachers were like, I'm focusing mostly on diversifying my book list and making sure that we're bringing in tons of different kinds of voices and identities. And you just shush with your methods, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'd be thrilled if a teacher was like, I don't have the capacity to do that right now because I'm working on this thing that I think is more important. We can't get better at everything all the time, all at once.
So have you had any pushback on, I mean, we all agree exactly with what you're saying, but we're also living in an age where there are places that don't want extended reading lists. And
no, they don't right now.
Don't want certain topics. And I'm wondering if you've had any of that in the schools that you've worked in.
Oh, I mean, almost all of them are feeling that stress, if not undergoing the battles that so many places that I'm sure you are facing too. And Kelly, I just want to shout out your letter that you published recently of denying the invitation. I think it's a great example of the kind of ways that we need to vehemently push back against this retroactive backlash that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand I understand a parent has the right to say, I don't want my kid to read X, but the parent doesn't have a right to say, I don't want the class to read X, right? And I appreciate that. Thank you. But I'm going to be honest, it wasn't a super difficult decision.
I know what you mean. Yeah, there's some easy wins there, right? Of being able to do the right thing. Yeah. I think I really struggle because, again, I believe in teachers being able to do what they're able to do and understanding the power structures that teachers are working within, right? So in my work with teachers or even building administrators, right? You want to be able to say like, well, you have to fight the power. But how many tools does a classroom teacher have if they're new to the game and all of that to fight against these groups of people who are organizing against having an author of color as a whole class novel? It's just pretty mind bending and brain breaking right now.
Yeah, yesterday we interviewed Lori DeSautels, who works in neuroscience, right? And she's talking about the stress that teachers are under. Like, it's just phenomenal. And one of the things that Penny and I were kicking around with her is this idea that you can't swim alone when you're in a storm, right? And so whether you're a new teacher or an old teacher, this idea of having partners or having small groups of like-minded people, you know, maybe you're a new teacher, but maybe you know somebody who's like-minded that has more voice than you do. That's it, you know, or as I said yesterday, you know, some districts are even going to team teaching just to give teachers to help support one another.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I mean, we need the community, and we need people who have the safety and security around them to get loud, to get louder, to say what they believe, and to fight for books and kids and people. Because
it's funny because we have teachers trapped right now in the narrative that we know what's best for your kids, but they're not in their classroom. So we got this device or this curriculum that somebody wrote that's never met your kids.
Yes.
And it's high quality.
It is
high quality scripts, right? So while we're interviewing Dr. Satels, my daughter is phoning me and I'm like, silence that, because she's just been given that speech. She's a third-year teacher in Boston, and she's been given the speech that we've got a better resource for you that's better than your own decision making. She's like, Mom, is this saying what I think it's saying? It is, right? It's saying that somebody outside your classroom knows your kids better than you do. And you always reject that thinking, because if you're doing your job right, you're getting to know your kids. And when you get to know them, you start making decisions about what they need. And I think teachers feel like they're powerless.
I do too.
In that narrative.
Well, there's so much that's being given to them. And in a way, I think we're just in this time where there's so much information coming at us all the time, right? In every direction. And we hear all of it in some ways. So not only do we have the curriculum that's been given to us, but we have Pinterest and Teachers Pay Teachers and the internet and online PD and this PD, and then our superintendent signed up for this cool thing, and we're going to go to 5 PD days on that. And it's just, there's so much information that it's like, it starts to feel like you don't have room to make a decision. Whereas when I started out, I don't know about the two of you, but it was literally like, here's your kids. I don't know. You should teach them something, I guess. You better figure that out. You're 27.
Oh, no.
This is problem, but I hope you can work it out.
From my first year of teaching, I go back to meet with the principal before I drive back to Oregon, because I'm deciding to leave California. And he goes, so you're going to need to return those curriculum guides. And I go, the what? And he motions behind him and he goes, the curriculum guides? I go, nobody gave me those. He goes, what have you been doing all year? And I'm like, whatever I thought they needed. Like, there was this moment where he's like panicked. I'm like, yep, for third graders.
Sorry about that.
Penny thought they needed, but.
Well, the problem with any curriculum guide, as Kate mentioned, you know, when she's talking about this class needs this reading approach and this class needs that reading approach, that curriculum guide is not going to see that distinction. And one of the major words that kept popping up when Penny and I wrote our 2 books together was being responsive. Like, you're teaching kids first, you're teaching stuff second, right? And so you have to be responsive to the kids who are in the class.
Yeah. And you see so often, I think, especially as kids get older, there's less and less of that. And again, of course, there's less and less of that. Right. There's so many kids, right? There's so many of them, and the time
they're
is
in
shorter.
Adolescence. Their job is to say, adults don't know what they're talking about. I know, right? But we don't respect that.
No,
we're like, no. I make all the choices because I choose better than you do. Think about how insulting that is. The watermark of 10 questions at the end of a chapter is, I don't trust you, right? It's like, what are we doing? These are kids that are alive with thinking and ideas.
That's right. And thinking about today with Romeo and Juliet, we have comprehension questions and all these things that you're supposed to know about this play. But of course, I've read that play about 50 times. I acted in it. I studied Shakespeare at Oxford. So yeah, I know something about Romeo and Juliet. I think maybe the 15-year-old who's just reading it for the first time, maybe they could just have a good experience, think some things, and then like move on. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Jack
it doesn't have to be
like, Miss Kittle, why do they talk like this? Why don't they talk like we talk? Well, it was 16, like you have to like understand that for that kid, it makes no sense to him. He wants to get it, but it's
Sure.
yeah.
So
And if you loosen it up, if you relax a little bit, right? If you just chill out about the whole thing, actually kids get real brilliant real fast, right? Like
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
kids who you may not have seen that brilliance in them, if you can sit and connect to that student and have a laugh and then just
raises
poke
really
some thinking out
interesting
of them.
philosophies about reading, right? And Tom Newkirk writes about this. Daniel Willingham writes about this in this book called The Reading Mind.
I'm gonna get that.
I think about my favorite book that turned me on to reading years ago is a book called Sophie's Choice, right?
Yeah.
And all these years later, I can tell you the three major characters and I can tell you her choice, but I could probably tell you nothing else about that book. But that book made a difference in my life. It's the gist of it, right? And if the best teachers of Romeo and Juliet are the teachers who take those ideas that are still super relevant, right? Which is a segue to a very awkward segue. I'm wondering if, like in Romeo and Juliet, is that an opportunity for you to help kids fall in love with close reading?
Look at you.
Very crafty,
A book you wrote with Chris Lehman.
My brother.
Can we talk a little bit about close reading and your thoughts about that? Yeah.
I'd love to. I mean, I think that, it's interesting when you publish a book, right? And then some time goes on and you look back and you're like, could we just tweak it a little bit, and kind of abridge it? Not because the content in the book, I still feel good about all that, but sort of the how to help teachers to implement it, right? Because our major belief was that, we're going to offer a structure here in this book, right? But more than anything else, what we probably need to do for anything as difficult and inhospitable as close reading is for most students, for anything that hard, we probably need to find like a structure or a ritual that we can repeat over and over again to build the capacity, right? And that structure we're teaching into and gaining confidence in and all of that good stuff. We offer up a structure in the book, but one of the things we talk a lot about is that, I don't really care if you use our structure. If there's a different one that works for you, that's great, right? But you should agree with your team, right? With your school, ideally with your district, right? That we have like a middle school into high school flow where when I say close reading, we blank, and that there's a kind of consistency to it that can vary, of course, that we can riff off of. But without those kind of drum beats, the melodies are hard to come by. Without that consistency, it's hard to get to that place. So, I like our structure of close reading. It's fun. But I think there's a lot of structures in close reading that would work in that same way. It's the repetition that gets at it, I think. In a lot of ways.
So
and
true.
I think the idea of different texts, not just written word, but using songs, using videos, using multimodal text with kids.
Yeah, I saw Chris present on this book and he had all these different texts. And I was like, okay, I want the glasses, the heart-shaped glasses with the colored. But I loved the idea of bringing in texts that kids would love.
Yeah. And what is so funny is that you start to see, like, if you bring in a dorky pop song and close read that first, right? You see that your kids know a whole lot about close reading, actually. They're coming to you knowing exactly how to return to a song again and again and mine it for meaning, right? Our kids are doing that, or at TikTok and, looking for what the funniest part is or the part that strikes you the most. They know how to return to a text and look at the details and make meaning off of it. We've just made it into, again, this really intense, serious four corners of the kind of thing that then sort of gets everyone feeling like, oh, I'm probably not doing it right. And now I feel bad about myself and I hate feeling bad about myself. So I think I hate reading. Right?
This is why people love you, because you make things so complex that are essentially really simple to think about. But then you add in all the ways they can do it, which is powerful. So talk to us about this one. And I'm only using this one because I don't know what you're writing right now.
I actually have a book coming out in the fall. It turns
What?
out.
Say
I
more,
know.
say more.
I thought about it just before I came on here. I drove into the driveway and
What?
ran upstairs, and I was like, I probably should have let them know that I do have a book. So in a way, it's like a sister book to a novel approach. You know, I think in a novel approach, like I make the argument that you know, that it will help kids, it will help us if we do a couple things with our whole class novels. You know, one, that we sort of focus in on when kids are independently practicing, what is it they're practicing, right? When they're independently reading, like, what is it that they're practicing when they're reading? And can we really explicitly teach in to that independent reading piece, that when I'm reading the whole class text on its own, what do I do? So having like a skills focus or skills foci that I'm teaching into using things like progressions and strategies and all that good stuff. And then the second is that it's going to really help kids if they move from that whole class novel. If we're doing Romeo and Juliet and learning how to read a tough text and monitor for sense, that then we're able to carry that work into another book that we choose, that I want to read, that maybe I can read with a little bit more strength and ease, that I'm reading in the partnership of others potentially, right? In a book club or partnership, and that we apply that same skill, right? To sort of say, now do it again. Great, here's all the same tools. Show me what you got. So a novel approach makes that main argument among some others. This issue of balance, right? How do I balance, you know, one of the things that happens, I think, sometimes with independent reading when there is mostly whole class novel curriculum, is that the independent reading becomes like the fun fluff thing we do on the side.
Yep, I've definitely seen that.
And I believe in that. Like, hey, that's good fluff, right? Like, let's keep that, that's good. Let's do that. But I think there's also a way that we can make that independent reading feel just as purposeful and rigorous and academic as the work we did in Romeo and Juliet. And if I don't pair that, the kids see one as higher than the other always, right? If they're doing,
which one do you think they choose? Which one do you think kids think is higher?
I think kids think the whole class novel is supposed to be more important. They might enjoy the independent reading more, but just like everything else that teenagers enjoy, right? Adults are like, no, not that.
Right. So what I hear from my college students is the teachers thought that was more important. That's garbage.
Yeah.
That's what they thought was more important. That had nothing to do with me. Right. And so I think there's this, like, what do we think they think? Yeah, they may think you think that's important.
That's right.
That's actually not important to me. I think there's such a difference between a 9th to 10th grader and 11th to 12th grader. 12th graders are like, I'm done with what you think is important, right? This is my life. So I think
I'm going to tell you, 12th graders still terrify me. I have to tell you, I'm still very scared every time I go into a 12th grade class.
Kelly and I would say our favorite
up.
age. They're on the edge, right? My favorite age, where they're just like, the thing that's weird for me is they were like, I'm in charge of the world. Like, look out. Like, look how I'm dressed, Miss Kellum. Like, I got it. Right. And then they show up on college campuses and they're terrified. Like, it's like this regression emotionally because everything is on their own. And they were so sure of who they were in high school, and they got no ground. And I think that the thing we don't see is that it's all independent. It's all independent in college. And the kids are like, wait a minute. Everybody was still walking me through everything. Right.
And that's my diorama, man. I need to do
the subject of our book was like, how do you turn over decision making earlier so that when kids get to college, they don't feel like you just changed the game? It shouldn't be a change. It should feel like I'm ready.
The English award in high school, right? I got the English award. Great grades. I also, by the way, didn't read a book in high school until my senior year, but I got the English award, right? And then I went to college and I got a D my first semester in English. And I was like, what? Right? But I had never been prepped to take over my own learning like that. And all of a sudden professors were like, read this book, be ready to talk about it on Thursday. I'm not going to tell you what to do.
Well, and Newkirk said to us, that feeling is betrayal.
Oh, that's brilliant.
You thought, that's such a great word. You said I was ready if I did this stuff, and I'm not ready.
I'm not ready.
And it doesn't feel good.
Yes. You should write about 4 essential studies that might help kids.
Yeah.
Kate, so I heard you talk a little bit about a novel approach. Did I hear the transition to the new book?
Oh no, I forgot. See, this is why
Okay.
I'm bad at doing this. Thank you, Kelly. So the new book, in some ways, I mean, it's a standalone, but in some ways it comes out of the conversations I had with a lot of middle school and high school teachers trying to implement things around a novel approach, where they kind of bought in. They're like, yes, okay, I should think about how to coach kids in these skills as I'm teaching this novel that they can transfer to other books. Cool. How do you teach those skills, right? In a secondary way. And a lot of the information out there for like lessons and strategies, like real specific stuff of like, how do you teach kids to analyze characters in more powerful ways? A lot of the content out there skews really young. And I think for older teachers, we, constantly, I know as a middle school teacher, I felt this, that they would just be like, well, just adapt it, just adapt it, just adapt. I know it's K2, but just adapt it. And I'm like, well, that doesn't totally work for my 8th graders, right? And it certainly doesn't work for all high school kids. So the new book is called The Heart of Fiction, Lessons for, I don't really know. Lessons.
Good lessons.
Good lessons here.
Good lessons.
Good
Determined
lessons here.
Lessons found inside.
Yep. Oh, for like character, theme, and craft, but I can't remember what the connective tissue is there. But I pair it with I take analyzing character, interpreting themes, and analyzing craft moves. And I have like for each of those 12 lessons. And I pair the lessons with little essays about why these strategies, why these things are important in my humanity and our humanity, and then connecting that with the reading that we're doing over time.
Is that a Heinemann book?
It is indeed.
And
I think I'm pretty married to Heinemann at this point.
It's due when?
I have it in. It's done and it's in. It's coming out in the fall, I think mid-October.
Very cool.
We will be reading it.
Just in time for a real NCTE.
That's it. I know. Oh my gosh, that'll be wild.
So
it will be.
We can't let you go without asking you, what are you reading, or what? Do you have any books that you recommend, either for adults or for kids?
I do. So one is the sort of obvious one. Well, there's two that are sort of everyone's reading right now that everyone should read. One is George Saunders. Swim in a Pond in the Rain. And I've been using Sticks by George Saunders as teaching text. It's a 2-paragraph long short story that is devastating.
Really?
It's perfect teaching text. So everyone should look up Sticks by George Saunders. I'm rereading this book as anti-racist because I'm
wait, let's back up.
Tiffany
for
Jewell.
People who don't know, could you just say a little bit about what the George Saunders books?
Of course. So what he does is he takes a look at, I can't remember how many, but a series of Russian short stories and writes essays about why they're awesome. It's just a great nerdy book read.
It's an English teacher's dream.
Right? We just sleep within our pillows. And then Tiffany Jewell's book is anti-racist. I'm rereading and just again impressed by the comprehensiveness with which she educates us on what we need to know to catch up as for we meaning me as a white educator, what I need to do to catch up and get up to speed. On what I need to be talking about in my classroom. And the last is a book called, I don't have it on me right now, but Matrix by Lauren Goff or Lauren Groff.
Oh my God, I read that. I read anything she writes. Fates and Furies. Did you read that?
No, but I have it.
My gosh, I almost
wait. What's Matrix about?
So she goes to a nunnery in 12th century France, but it's really looking at like what would it kind of like the question of like what would it look like if women ran the world?
If women ruled the world.
What would be better? What would be worse? What would be just the same, right? And it really examines in a very human way, non-idealistic, right? Just like as human beings, if female people had, or female identified people had all the power, what would that look like?
But did you read The Power?
No.
Oh my God. Okay, it's right here.
But I do feel like I have to say this though, just before we end, because I know you have a baseball game to get to. The Power. Oh, good. I've gotten 2 book recommendations from you.
Are you kidding me? Women possess this power in their hands. They can like stop you in your tracks and drop you and kill you. So what happens when women rule the world? This is an unbelievable book. But I have a set
of books of women running the world now.
Oh my God. But The Matrix, like
Sorry,
it's
Kelly.
one of those epic stories. It takes you from her childhood all the way through to when she dies. And I think
Beautiful.
those are not very common. And after she
No,
wrote Faith and
especially the
Furies,
brevity.
I'm like, she's on my list. She's somebody
She's
I'll
great.
read whatever she writes.
She's incredible. But I have to admit that I'm holding up all these books and bragging, but actually my reading life is total crap right now, if I'm being totally honest. And not
I hear that from a lot of teachers, right?
I'm
They're in
struggling. Yeah.
survival mode, exhaustion mode.
By the time work is done and the kids are in bed and Mag and I have had a chance to make the 1,000 decisions we have to make, you know, the next day, I am pretty fried. So I'm really trying to just reboot and read 10. I'm back to like 10 minutes a day, right? I'm back to like the advice I used to give my kids. If you can't read for 45 minutes a night, find 10 minutes. Just make sure your eyes are on a page for a little bit during the day. So I feel like I need to say that because I'm acting like, well, I'm a voracious reader. I'm reading 3 books, but actually I'm just struggling to read 10 minutes a night before I fall asleep.
You know what? I went from these ridiculous romances that I was reading that were keeping me like just reading. Like they don't teach me anything. I don't become a better human being. I'm just along for the ride. Now
Maybe a
I'm
more
reading
romantic
serial
human being.
killers because of Kelly. Michael Connolly, I'm on my 4th book
Good.
and I'm like, oh, I get to go to sleep and read this book. It's ridiculous. But like the way that I'm coping with what's happened in the last
That's right.
2.5 years.
That's it. Serial
Well-
killers and romance feels like a good
It's not
that's going to be the solution. That's the only way out, I think. Just
Well, just
romantic serial killers. I don't know. Is that
just teaching in normal time with young kids. Come on. Then you
For
add the
sure.
pandemic to it, and I mean that's just a hard stage of life. And so we do know that you worked all day today.
I
that
know.
you struggled through New Jersey traffic.
Through New
You
Jersey?
ran in, turned on your computer 2 minutes after you arrived at your apartment, and here you are. So 2 things. Number 1, we apologize for adding that level of stress
No,
to your
it's just a
day.
joy. It's just a joy.
And number 2, we appreciate so much that actually we get to see you again and hear you and talk to you again. I know we hung out at Baltimore, I think, in
Yeah,
a
I think it was
cool
Baltimore.
library.
Yeah.
But it's so nice to see you, and we really appreciate it. And please give our best to Maggie.
I will.
Absolutely.
I will.
I missed you
I
both.
will.
And you know what? If teachers haven't read your books, they need to read all of them because you have the heart of a teacher and you show us ways to think. And I think that's what we ask for from people who write. So thank you, Kate.
Thanks so much.
Thanks,
It's great
Kate.
to
So
see both of you.
inspiring.
Good to see you.
Anytime.
All right,
See you.
bye-bye.
Bye,
Talk to you too
everybody.
anytime. Bye, everybody.